Proverbs 28:19. Whoever works his land will have abundant food, but whoever chases fantasies will have his fill of poverty. Wise man, work brings abundance, laziness brings poverty. Allow me to begin this journey by opening with you the word a little before this verse, in Proverbs chapter 28, verses 18 to 20. I wrote that the one who walks in integrity will be saved, but the one who turns aside into crooked paths will suddenly fall. I also declared that whoever works faithfully will be filled with blessings, but whoever runs after quick riches will not go unpunished. What I meant to show is simple. The path to abundance passes through the healing of laziness, faithfulness in work, and constancy in life. While haste and sloth corrode the days, diligence builds pillars of prosperity. And that is why this video did not reach you by chance, wise man. Breathe deeply. Now you are in a safe place. I want you to rest. Sit with me as one who sits at the feet of a friend, eager to share treasures. I know that your routine is marked by pressures, responsibilities, and perhaps even by that feeling of discouragement and weariness, maybe because the fruits are not yet so visible. But today I speak to you not only as a man, but as a king. And more than that, I speak as one who received wisdom from the Most High to teach. This will not be just a conversation, but an immersion. You will hear the word, reflect with me on every detail, and pray as one who opens his heart before God. Do not be startled, but I will speak to you as if I truly were King Solomon himself. Because that is exactly what I want you to experience, to be side by side with the wisdom of God's word incarnated in speech. Allow me then to lift a prayer for you. Lord, Father of all wisdom, I now ask that you open the understanding of this wise man who listens to me. Deliver him from laziness, strengthen his arms for faithful work, and cleanse his heart from all anxiety that weighs without building. Teach him to see every task as an altar and every effort as worship before you. May discipline take root in him like a tree planted by streams of water, and may the fruits of abundance and peace blossom in his life. Give him courage to persevere, purpose so he does not lose his way, and hope to continue, even when the days seem barren. Amen. And before we move forward to the first reading, I want to make you an invitation. If my words are already building up your heart, leave your like now on this video, and subscribe to the channel so that you may continue at my side in these moments of rest and learning. This is not only about following content, but about remaining in a journey of wisdom that will transform your vision about work and prosperity, about life, and about God. This is only the opening of a door to many other moments of rest, in which we will continue growing together in the art of living as true wise men. Work is the field of abundance. Let us open the scripture in Proverbs chapter 12, verses 11 and 12. I wrote, "He who works his land will have abundant food, but he who chases fantasies has no sense. The wicked desire the plunder of evil men, but the root of the righteous yields fruit." What I meant is that faithful work is like fertile ground, always ready to produce harvest. The man who tends his land, even if small, never lacks provision. But the one who lives on illusions, chasing after quick rewards, ends up lost in desires that never come true. Think with me. Today, many no longer have fields to cultivate, but they have responsibilities, jobs, and projects. The worker who focuses on doing his craft well, even if it is not the highest position, becomes indispensable. But the one who spends his time hunting for quick get-rich formulas, jumping from one opportunity to another, loses himself in paths without fruit. A young man who decides to learn and go deep into a skill may soon be sought after for the value of what he knows. But the one who only chases easy promises, gambling, online scams, or quick profit schemes, ends up ashamed and empty because he chased fantasies instead of sowing faithfulness. And if you move with me to Proverbs chapter 14, verses 23 and 24, you will hear the same emphasis once more. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads only to poverty. The wealth of the wise is their crown, but the folly of fools yields folly. In other words, it is not much talk, but the doing that builds a solid future. Abundance does not come from speeches, but from continuous labor. Wise man, notice how from early on I wanted to show that it is not luck that generates prosperity, but daily diligence that seed after seed produces harvests. Today we see many who talk and talk but never act. They plan, dream, share ideas, but never put their hands to the plow. It is like the one who writes an endless list of resolutions for the year, but does not take even the first step. On the other hand, the man who acts, even in silence, begins to see results. The bricklayer who raises one wall at a time, the student who reads one chapter a day, the small entrepreneur who serves one client with care, all of them, without fanfare, build wealth that becomes a crown. Empty speech may draw temporary applause, but it is constant work that sustains life. Moving now to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 9 to 13, I wrote, "What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God." What I meant to teach here is that every season has its fruit. Work, far from being punishment, is a divine gift, because in it, man partakes of the eternal purpose of God. In practical life, this means that not every effort produces immediate return. A farmer plants today, but only reaps months later. The same happens with those who open a small business, with those who dedicate themselves to study, with those who build solid relationships. Each phase has its appointed time, and trying to hurry the season is foolishness. I have seen many give up because the result did not come quickly. But wise man, if you understand that there is beauty in the process, you will see that even sweat has value. It is what allows life to be lived with meaning, because God wanted man to participate in creation, caring, building, and tasting every fruit at the right time. And I also want to read to you what is in Song of Songs, chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. There I described, "Dark am I, yet lovely, daughters of Jerusalem, dark like the tents of Kedar, like the tent curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am dark, because I am darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I had to neglect." What I meant to reveal is that even when we are forced to care for what belongs to others, dignity lies in not neglecting oneself. Love requires labor, and care is always an effort of dedication. This reality is alive even today. How many work in companies that are not theirs, in houses that are not theirs, in businesses that enrich others and yet feel weary because they seem to harvest nothing for themselves? But wise man, even in such moments, dignity is found in caring well, because he who is faithful with what belongs to others will be honored with what is his own. The young woman who dedicates herself to an internship, even without a high salary, is planting credibility. The father who sustains his home with a modest but honest wage is cultivating his family's trust. Every effort, even when it seems not to bear immediate fruit for oneself, prepares future vineyards. And to close this first reading, I recall Psalm 128, written by my father David. He said, "Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. You will eat the fruit of your labor. Blessings and prosperity will be yours. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your children will be like olive shoots around your table. Yes, this will be the blessing for the man who fears the Lord." Notice, wise man, Both my father and I agreed that work is a source of honor and joy when lived in faithfulness and in the fear of God. This is very practical. A blessed home does not spring from instant miracles, but from years of faithfulness in work and reverence to the Lord. The husband who labors with integrity, the wife who tends to the household with dedication, the children who learn from an early age to respect effort. Together, they experience the promised happiness. It is not only about bread on the table, but about the spirit of gratitude that fills the house. When each one eats from the fruit of their labor and recognizes the hand of God, there is peace, joy, and honor that no unjust wealth can ever offer. Now, reflecting on all this, I must expose the deceit that imprisons many. Some believe that abundance is the privilege of a lucky few or of those with good connections. But I tell you, luck may give fleeting sparks, connections may open temporary doors, but only constant work sustains a true future. The man who plants and waters, even in silence, builds roots that no wind can uproot. And to illustrate, imagine two men. One depends on contacts, favors, and strokes of luck. He may rise quickly, but his foundation is sand. Another decides to remain steady in a simple craft, such as that of a carpenter or a technician, and for years delivers with quality. At first, few notice, but in time, his faithfulness makes him a reference, and clients seek him without his having to chase them. So is the life of the wise man. Constancy is invisible at the beginning, but inevitably produces abundance in the end. And perhaps you wonder how this applies to your own life. See, in your job, in small businesses, in household care, in every seemingly common task, the logic of abundance is hidden. The farmer does not plant once and then give up. He tends to each season, trusts in time, and persists until the harvest comes. In the same way, wise man, if you remain faithful in every detail, even if unseen by others, you will be preparing a field that will inevitably bear fruit, because God honors constant work. Bring this into your routine. If you sweep the floor of a restaurant, do it as if preparing the palace of a king. If you organize documents in an office, do it as if they were eternal records. If you care for children, treat it as if you were cultivating future trees of righteousness. What may seem simple in human eyes, before God is an altar. And the altar of constant work always attracts the honor and abundance of the Lord. Let us now move together to Proverbs chapter 20, verses 4 to 7. I wrote, "Sluggards do not plow in season, so at harvest time they look but find nothing. The righteous lead blameless lives. Blessed are their children after them. When a king sits on his throne to judge, he winnows out all evil with his eyes." What I meant to show is that the time for sowing cannot be wasted. He who flees discipline today will reap emptiness tomorrow. But the one who works with integrity leaves behind a heritage not only of goods, but of reputation and trust for his children. In today's world, this is evident in the life of those who always postpone the essential. The student who refuses to review his lessons because it feels tedious suffers when the exam comes. The professional who does not invest in learning now falls behind when the market demands new skills. But the diligent man, even if he suffers in the winter, prepares his table for the harvest. He does not need to beg for opportunities, for his constancy speaks for him. And the heritage he leaves his children is far greater than material wealth. It is the example of one who did not flee from discipline. Now let us turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 18 to 20. I said, "This is what I have observed to be good, that it is appropriate for a person to eat, to drink, and to find satisfaction in their toilsome labor under the sun during the few days of life God has given them, for this is their lot. Moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions, and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy in their toil, this is a gift of God. They seldom reflect on the days of their life, because God keeps them occupied with gladness of heart." What I wanted to teach is that true wealth is not in endless accumulation, but in enjoying with gratitude what is gained through faithfulness. How many times have you seen people who accumulate much yet never find peace? They run after more and more, but cannot sit down to celebrate with gratitude what they already have. This is the deception of wealth without purpose. But the man who looks at his table, even if simple, and recognizes God's goodness in every meal, that man is already prosperous. Abundance is not measured in quantity, but in contentment. He who gives thanks for the little discovers that the little multiplies in peace and joy. I will now open Proverbs chapter 27, verses 23 to 27. I counseled, "Be sure you know the condition of your flocks, give careful attention to your herds, for riches do not endure forever, and a crown is not secure for all generations. When the hay is removed and new growth appears, and the grass from the hills is gathered in, the lambs will provide you with clothing, and the goats with the price of a field. You will have plenty of goat's milk to feed your family, and to nourish your female servants." What I meant to show is that prosperity does not come only from accumulation, but from constant management and daily care of what we already have. Today, many dream of great conquests, yet neglect what they already possess. It is like the one who desires to open $1 million company, but is not faithful in organizing his personal finances. Or the leader who longs for positions of honor, but does not care well for the small team he already leads. The wise man understands that the key to the future lies in the care of the present. He who knows well his flocks, that is, who carefully tends to every responsibility, will never be put to shame because God blesses faithful stewardship. And I also want to remind you of what is written in Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 12. There it says that the Lord will open the heavens, the storehouse of his bounty, to send rain on your land in season, and to bless all the work of your hands. Wise man, what this means is that even the most carefully tended harvest needs divine favor. Human effort is essential, but God's blessing is what transforms work into abundance. It is easy to see this. Two men may work in the same field, but the one who honors God with integrity experiences supernatural provision. It may not always be immediate material riches, but it comes in open doors, in healthy relationships, in peace of mind. The man who fears the Lord does not live in anxiety, for he knows the rain will come at the appointed time. This is what gives him courage to keep sowing, even when the skies appear closed. And to confirm this, let us remember together what Moses wrote in Psalm 90, verses 16 and 17. May your deeds be shown to your servants, your splendor to their children. May the favor of the Lord our God rest on us. Establish the work of our hands for us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. What this request teaches is that working hard is not enough. We need God's confirmation upon what we do. Wise man, see how this applies to your life. How many labor day and night yet feel their works never stand firm? That is because they work only for themselves, forgetting to present the fruit to the Lord. But the one who seeks God's favor over every project finds stability. The business prospers, the family flourishes, life becomes balanced. For it is not merely human sweat, it is divine blessing confirming each step. And when God confirms, no one can undo it. The revelation that few perceive is that immediate results are not what matter most. What truly tips the scale of honor is faithfulness to the process, remaining steady even when there are no applause or quick returns. Many focus only on the fruit, but forget that the root sustains the tree. The man who keeps watering every day, even when the field looks barren, is the one who later reaps abundantly. And I tell you, the Lord does not leave unrewarded the one who perseveres in silence. This can be seen in the small details of life. Consider the worker who dedicates himself to a project in the office without expecting to be noticed by his boss. For months, perhaps no one acknowledges his effort. But when the time for promotion arrives, he is the one who stands out, for his constancy bore witness. Or think of a mother who repeats simple acts of care in her home every day. The world may call it routine, but God calls it faithfulness. It is in the hidden process that true prosperity is forged, for only those who are faithful in little can be entrusted with much. And this is why I tell you, make your work an altar. Do not separate what you do during the week from what you present before God. Your table, your office, your shop, the field you cultivate, even the simplest household chore, all can become places of worship when done with integrity. When you labor with a pure heart, God Himself takes pleasure in your work and transforms the ordinary into the sacred. Work ceases to be mere survival and becomes an expression of worship. Let me give you clear examples so you may understand. A businessman who chooses to pay his employees fairly, even when he could withhold part of their wages, is raising an altar before God. The student who dedicates himself seriously to his studies, even when no one is pressing him, is offering silent worship. Even the person who sweeps the floor of their home or prepares a meal with care partakes in this altar. For it is not the size of the task that defines its greatness, but the heart with which it is performed. Thus, wise man, every effort of yours can be an offering, every gesture a sacrifice of praise before the Most High. Wise man, before we move forward, I want you to take a deep breath and allow everything we have shared so far to find space within you. Do not be in a hurry to continue. I know life pushes you to always run, but this is a different moment. It is a time to silence the noise, a time to let the word sink into your heart. Close your eyes for a few moments, detach yourself from what surrounds you, and lay before the Lord the burdens that weigh upon your shoulders. As the gentle music plays, make this instant an encounter with God. If you need to give thanks, then give thanks. If you need to ask for direction, speak to Him now. If your heart carries anxiety about the future, pour out that restlessness before the Most High. And if you wish to receive prayer, share your request in the comments. Write your name, mention where you are listening from, and open your heart about the challenge you face. Other wise men will see your message and intercede for you. And I ask you, do not fail to also pray for those who have commented. This is how this place will become a living community of fellowship, sustained not only by words, but by prayer and genuine care. Now rest in silence for a few seconds. Let the Spirit of God speak to your heart without noise, without hurry, just presence. The hidden danger of laziness. Let us now open Proverbs chapter 6, beginning at verse 6 and continuing to verse 11. I said, "Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer or ruler, yet it stores its provisions in summer and gathers its food at harvest. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief and scarcity like an armed man." What I meant to show is that nature itself reveals the discipline many men ignore. Even the tiny ant prepares for tomorrow, while the sluggard deceives himself into thinking he can postpone forever. Now think of how this manifests in our days. Perhaps you are not sleeping all day long, but you lose yourself in distractions, postponing responsibilities that pile up like debts. The time that could be used to learn a skill, invest in a business, or strengthen your home is instead surrendered to tasks that build nothing. It is like the ant that gathers grain by grain. It knows that every detail matters for the future. The wise man who observes this understands that prosperity does not spring from a sudden leap, but from small seeds planted with constancy. I want us to now open Proverbs chapter 10, verses 4 and 5. I wrote, "Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son." Here I was teaching that laziness does not affect only the one who practices it, but also those who depend on him. Diligence brings honor, while negligence brings public shame. See how real this is. A father who lets job opportunities pass or fails to fulfill his responsibilities bears not only the weight of his own failure, but exposes his family to lack and disgrace. Likewise, a young man who always chooses rest over study may one day see doors closed to him because of his negligence. The wise man understands that his choices are not his alone. They shape the destiny of those who walk beside him. The harvest lost today may become tomorrow's hunger. Let us move now to Ecclesiastes chapter 4, from verse 4 to verse 8. I said, "I saw that all toil and all skill in work spring from one person's envy of another. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind." Again I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. "For whom am I toiling?" he asked, "and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment?" This too is meaningless, a miserable business. What I intended to show is that both laziness and labor without purpose lead to ruin. One destroys itself through inertia, the other through meaningless exhaustion. And is this not what happens in our generation? Many confuse laziness with rest, but in truth they live without a reason, folding their arms before their mission. Others run without stopping, driven by comparison and envy, but never find peace. The balance is found in working with purpose before God. The wise man learns that laziness and vanity are brothers. One steals the future through lack of action, the other steals life through excess without meaning. Let us now open Proverbs chapter 19, verses 15 and 16. I wrote, "Laziness brings on deep sleep, and the shiftless go hungry. Whoever keeps commandments keeps their life, but whoever shows contempt for their ways will die." What I intended to show is that laziness is not just lack of action. It is a choice that leads to loss. But faithfulness to God's instruction keeps a man standing and guards his life. Now imagine what this means in your daily life, when someone constantly postpones what should be done, whether at work or at home. Their life becomes overtaken by a sleep that is not only physical, but spiritual. Little by little, opportunities are lost, fruits go unharvested, and scarcity takes hold. On the other hand, the wise man who keeps God's instructions finds clarity, organizes his life, fulfills his responsibilities, and sees his table supplied. For daily faithfulness to discipline is food for the soul and sustenance for the body. I now want to read to you Psalm 37, verses 23 through 26, written by my father David. He said, "The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him. Though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. I was young, and now I am old, yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread. They are always generous and lend freely. Their children will be a blessing." What my father was teaching is that righteous diligence is sustained by the Lord, and the inheritance of the righteous reaches even their children. See how this applies to you. The lazy man fears the future because he does not prepare, but the diligent walks with confidence because he knows the Lord directs his steps. This does not mean absence of falls or difficulties, but the assurance that even in struggles there will be divine sustenance. The wise man understands that each effort today is not only provision for himself, but a seed for his descendants. The table he sets for his children does not come only from sweat, but from the faithfulness of God, who honors the one who is faithful in little. Laziness, wise man, is often misunderstood. Many think it is simply lying down doing nothing, but I tell you, it manifests in far subtler ways. It appears when you postpone what should be done, when you lose yourself in distractions that steal your time, or when you start something but fail to finish. This modern laziness wears the mask of procrastination, endless scrolling on screens, lack of consistency in simple tasks. What seems harmless quietly drains your strength and robs your days. And perhaps you have felt this yourself. When you spend hours distracted instead of completing a simple task, anxiety grows, guilt sets in, and the feeling of always being behind becomes constant. It is not merely about not doing, but about wasting time on what yields no fruit. The wise man understands that every wasted minute is like a lost seed that will never sprout. And if today you feel stuck, it may be that the root lies in this subtle form of laziness that consumes your energy without you noticing. Another truth I must show you is the inevitable consequence of laziness. It does not merely delay, it shuts doors. The opportunity arrives, but the one sleeping misses the hour. The field ripens, but the one who does not harvest watches the fruits fall to the ground. The family looks on in shame, for they see that prosperity could have been seized, but it was wasted. Laziness brings not only material poverty, but also poverty of purpose, of recognition, and of joy. And perhaps this has already wounded you. That project that never left the page, that job lost because you did not prepare in time, that word not kept which stained your credibility before others. This is how stagnation is born, through the sum of small abandonments, through the habit of quitting halfway. The wise man knows there is no greater pain than looking back and realizing it was not lack of opportunity that held him back, but lack of consistency. I would like to read now from Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verses 15 through 18. There I wrote, "The toil of fools wearies them. They do not know the way to town. Woe to the land whose king was a servant and whose princes feast in the morning. Blessed is the land whose king is of noble birth and whose princes eat at a proper time, for strength and not for drunkenness. Through laziness the rafters sag, because of idle hands the house leaks." What I intended to teach here is that laziness does not manifest only in the body, but in governments, in families, in leadership. It silently corrodes even solid structures. Think carefully about how this happens today. A company with negligent leaders soon loses its best talents. A house without care begins to show cracks, leaks, signs of neglect. A life ruled by laziness slowly loses vitality until it becomes unsustainable. The wise man understands that every area without diligence turns into ruin, not suddenly but drip by drip, like the leak that destroys the foundation of a house. Perhaps in your life there are already spiritual or emotional leaks caused by lack of consistency, and this is God's call to repair them before it is too late. Now let me open with you the Song of Songs, chapter 5, verses 2 through 6. I wrote, "I slept, but my heart was awake. Listen, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my flawless one. My head is drenched with dew, my hair with the dampness of the night. I have taken off my robe. Must I put it on again? I have washed my feet. Must I soil them again?" My beloved thrust his hand through the latch opening. My heart began to pound for him. I arose to open for my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh, my fingers with flowing myrrh on the handles of the bolt. I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had left, he was gone. My heart sank at his departure. I looked for him, but did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer. What I intended to show is that laziness, even in love, produces loss. Delay in responding to the call opens space for absence and for sorrow. Do you realize how this touches our daily lives? How many relationships grow cold, not for lack of love, but for lack of dedication, of readiness to serve and care. The laziness of cultivating intimacy creates distance, and the opportunity to be close is lost. The same happens with friendships, with family, and even with faith. God knocks at the door every day, but if we delay in answering, we risk losing precious moments of His presence. The wise man learns that even in love, vigilance, effort, and readiness are essential. I will now move to Proverbs chapter 21, verses 25 and 26. There I wrote, "The craving of the sluggard will be the death of him because his hands refuse to work. All day long he craves for more, but the righteous give without sparing." What I wanted to teach is that the lazy man lives imprisoned in desire, always dreaming but never acting. He longs for abundance but will not move his hands to cultivate it. But the righteous who works and shares finds fullness. And is this not what we see all around us? People trapped in dreams, lists of goals, projects with no action. The lazy man is rich in plans but poor in results, while the diligent man, even without showing off, builds little by little a solid future. The difference is not in desire, but in the willingness to turn desire into real effort. This is where the wise man reveals himself, not by what he wishes, but by what he delivers with his hands and with his heart. Finally, let us read Exodus chapter 23, verses 10 to 12. The Lord commanded, "For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops, but during the 7th year, let the land lie unplowed and unused. Then the poor among your people may get food from it, and the wild animals may eat what is left. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove. 6 days do your work, but on the 7th day do not work, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and so that the slave born in your household and the foreigner living among you may be refreshed." What God intended to teach is that even rest must be diligent, intentional, planned. Rest is blessing, but laziness is ruin. See the difference. God instituted rest as a rhythm of life, a blessing to renew strength, but laziness is the absence of purpose. Rest with purpose restores, rest without purpose destroys. The wise man does not confuse the two. He knows how to stop at the right time, but he also knows how to work at the right time. Laziness, on the other hand, is a permanent pause which corrodes the body, the soul, and the legacy. There is a revelation many prefer to ignore. Laziness is never neutral. It is not just a state of inactivity, but an active agent of destruction. Just as an abandoned field becomes covered with thorns and suffocates any fruit, so also the life of one who does not cultivate work fills with loss and disappointment. What I intended to show in the verses read is that negligence opens invisible cracks that over time bring down even structures that once seemed unshakable. The leaking roof is not destroyed in a day, but by the sum of days without care. So it is with the lazy soul. It empties little by little until it collapses. Look around you, wise man. How many people do you know who did not lose everything at once, but allowed laziness to corrode little by little? The student who keeps putting off study until career opportunities slip away. The husband or wife who postpones conversation until the relationship grows cold. The worker who settles for the minimum until one day he is replaced because he never stood out. Laziness does not destroy noisily, but silently, like rust corroding from within. And I tell you, do not wait for collapse to notice the signs. React today, for the field you neglect will be overtaken by thorns. The direction is clear. Overcoming laziness is not waiting for some great miracle, but cultivating daily discipline. The secret lies in planning, beginning, and completing. The wise man does not confuse movement with progress. He understands that what transforms is faithfulness in habit, not isolated bursts of effort. It is like water that drips every day upon stone. The impact of a single drop seems insignificant, but over time it shapes even the hardest rock. So it is with constant work, imperceptible at first, but powerful in the outcome. In practice, this means building habits that sustain your life, rising at the same hour, finishing what you start, noting commitments and keeping them, refusing to yield to distractions. Does it seem small? Yet this is exactly what separates the wise man from the one who lives in stagnation. The student who reviews every day, the worker who delivers ahead of schedule, the mother who orders her home with constancy. All of them reap fruit because they understood that victory is not in grand gestures, but in daily faithfulness. And I tell you, heaven sees every faithful gesture, and abundance is the inevitable reward of the one who refuses to yield to laziness. The laziness as inertia of the soul. The first verse I want to read with you is Proverbs chapter 18, verse 9. There I wrote, "Whoever is slack in his work is brother to him who destroys." What I wanted to show is that laziness is not merely absence of effort, but complicity with destruction. Whoever fails to do what needs to be done already becomes an ally of the one who tears down what was built. See how this applies in the lives of many. The employee who neglects details in his work, though unaware, contributes to the loss of the company. The father who delays giving attention to his children allows someone else to take that place. Perhaps the streets, perhaps harmful influences. Negligence is always an open door to loss, and I tell you, the lazy man becomes brother to the destroyer, because both produce the same outcome: ruin. Now let us open Proverbs chapter 26, verses 13 to 16. There I said, "The sluggard says, 'There's a lion in the road, a fierce lion roaming the streets.' As a door turns on its hinges, so a sluggard turns on his bed. A sluggard buries his hand in the dish. He is too lazy to bring it back to his mouth. A sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 people who answer discreetly." What I intended to reveal is that laziness always manufactures excuses, creates imaginary fears, and produces a false wisdom that deceives itself. The sluggard thinks he is clever, but his life is proof that he is not. How many today repeat the same excuses? They say they cannot start a business because the market is dangerous. They cannot restart because there are lions in the streets. They cannot change because the timing is wrong. And like the door that never leaves its place, they live in endless cycles, spinning without progress. Others even begin something but tire before finishing, like one who dips his hand in the dish but lacks strength to bring it to his mouth. And I tell you, excuse is the preferred weapon of laziness, and it always sounds convincing to the ears of those who do not wish to change. Very well, let us now turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 18. I wrote, "Through laziness the rafters sag, because of idle hands the house leaks." What I wanted to teach is that prolonged negligence brings inevitable ruin. Nothing collapses suddenly. Collapse is always the result of many days of abandonment. Think of a house left to time without care. First a small crack, then a leak, later a wall weakened. So it is with the lazy heart. The roof that collapses is the career that crumbled because it was not tended, the marriage that fell apart because it was not nurtured, the faith that weakened because it was no longer fed. The lazy man does not lose everything in a single day, but in thousands of days where he refused to act. I now want to open Proverbs chapter 24, verses 30 to 34. I said, "I went past the field of a sluggard, past the vineyard of someone who has no sense. Thorns had come up everywhere, the ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. I applied my heart to what I observed, and learned a lesson from what I saw. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man." What I wanted to show is that laziness is a silent enemy that takes over little by little until suddenly poverty breaks in with violence. Perhaps this is the most vivid parable of laziness, an abandoned field. No effort is needed for thorns to take over. only that nothing be done. Such is the life of the man who yields to indolence. His dreams become covered with weeds, his opportunities surrounded by ruins. And when poverty comes, it does not ask permission. It enters like a thief who breaks the door, like an armed robber who seizes everything. Wise man, do not despise this vision, for every uncared-for field is a portrait of the future of the one who sleeps too long. And finally, let us go to the Psalms, chapter 103, verses 1 to 5. There my father David wrote, "Praise the Lord, my soul. All my inmost being, praise his holy name. Praise the Lord, my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all your sins and heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from the pit and crowns you with love and compassion, who satisfies your desires with good things so that your youth is renewed like the eagles." What my father wanted to show is that the soul cannot remain in inertia. It must be awakened to bless the Lord, for it is in the movement of worship that renewal is found. See the contrast. Laziness makes the soul wither, but worship awakens it to life. The one who gives his soul over to indolence loses his vigor, but the one who calls his soul to bless the Lord finds strength like the eagles. The wise man understands that the only way to break the inertia of the soul is to move toward God, for he alone renews weariness, gives purpose to rising, and strength to walking. Just as a body at rest desires to remain still, so too the soul surrendered to laziness tends to settle. This is the parable of inertia. Movement requires initial effort, but once begun, the body continues forward. Prolonged rest, however, makes starting again heavier with each passing day. It is exactly the same with life. The one who is accustomed to always leaving things for tomorrow, who finds comfort in immobility, discovers that each day adds one more weight upon the shoulders. The simple act of rising early becomes unbearable. A small task feels like an impossible burden, and when he finally notices, years have passed, and his life resembles a field overrun with thorns. Let me bring this into today's reality. Think of the student who always postpones study, believing that tomorrow he will have more strength. Tomorrow comes, but his mind is already conditioned to inertia, and the cycle repeats until the harvest time is gone and he stands with no fruit. Or think of the professional with good ideas, but who never executes them because he fears beginning small. And so, while others advance, he remains in the same place. The wise man understands that laziness does not merely waste time, it steals the future. It is an invisible prison that holds the soul still, and the longer one waits to break it, the harder it becomes to escape. Now I want to reveal an invisible error many commit, to think that laziness is simply doing nothing. But the truth is that laziness also appears as resistance to restarting. It is not only lying down and sleeping, it is avoiding what must be done. It is postponing the necessary conversation, delaying the change that is already clear, leaving for later the decision that should be taken today. The lazy man may even appear busy, filling his days with distractions, but his soul remains motionless. This is why I tell you, laziness is less about rest and more about the lack of reason to rise. The one who does not find purpose sees every effort as useless. The man who has no clear reason to move will always prefer to remain at rest. Perhaps this is why many today, even with access to opportunities, remain stagnant, because they have not yet understood that work, when aligned with God, is not a burden but meaning. Wise man, ask yourself, what keeps you motionless? For if the soul has no purpose, it will always seek to remain lying down. I would now like to read with you in Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verses 4 to 6. I said, "Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. As you do not know the path of the wind, or how the body is formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. Sow your seed in the morning, and at evening let your hands not be idle. for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. What I wanted to show is that waiting for perfect conditions is wasting time, because fruit only comes to the one who dares to plant, even without guarantees. Now I will take you to Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verses 11 to 14. There Moses wrote, "Now what I am commanding you today is not too difficult for you or beyond your reach. It is not up in heaven so that you have to ask, 'Who will ascend into heaven to get it and proclaim it to us, so we may obey it?' Nor is it beyond the sea, so that you have to ask, 'Who will cross the sea to get it and proclaim it to us, so we may obey it?' No, the word is very near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart, so you may obey it." Wise man, this teaches that we do not need to wait for a distant sign to begin, because God has already given us capacity and direction. And I also want to read with you Psalm 119, verse 32. The psalmist declared, "I run in the path of your commands, for you have broadened my understanding." That is, it is the heart enlarged by God that creates movement. The wise man understands that the impulse to overcome inertia does not come from fleeting motivation, but from the Lord who strengthens. Now, wise man, allow me to reflect with you. Overcoming laziness does not mean turning life into an inhuman effort of grand conquests in a single strike. It means beginning with one simple step, rising earlier to pray, arranging your desk before starting the day, completing that task which has been postponed so many times. What I wanted to show you with the texts we have read is that life moves when you sow, even without immediate guarantees of harvest. The farmer does not control winds or rains, but he knows that if he does not plant, he will never reap. The same is true for you. Begin small, but begin. See it in practice. The student who opens a book for 10 minutes every day, even without understanding everything, builds a discipline that will carry him forward. The worker who faithfully delivers each task, even if it is repetitive, prepares himself for greater responsibilities. The man who decides to make just one phone call, write just one page, or pray for only 5 minutes, breaks the inertia that kept him still. Movement creates movement, and this small constancy transforms into great works when sustained over time. And here I want to give you a symbolic image so that you never forget. Laziness is like a rusty gate. The longer it goes without use, the harder it becomes to open. The metal stiffens, the rust locks the hinges, and each day without movement increases the effort needed to restart it. But the good news is that even a rusty gate can be opened. It only takes the decision to apply the initial force. So it is with your soul. If you are willing to push today, even with difficulty, you will see that movement becomes easier with every new effort. That is why I invite you. Break the inertia now. Do not wait for perfect motivation. Do not wait for the right clouds. Do not wait for ideal conditions. Rise from your rest and take a step before God. The one who runs in the path of the commandments will see his heart enlarged, and the life that once seemed stagnant will gain movement. The wise man does not wait for the perfect scenario, but trusts that the God who opened the heavens is the same who will sustain each step. The balance between labor and purpose. I would like to open with you in Proverbs chapter 16, verses 1 to 3. I wrote, "The plans of the heart belong to man, but the right answer comes from the Lord. All the ways of a man seem pure to him, but the Lord weighs the spirit. Commit your works to the Lord, and your plans will be established." What I wanted to teach here is that it is not solitary effort that sustains the future, but the surrender of work before God. Planning is necessary, but true confirmation comes when we submit each decision to the Most High. In practice, this means that you may have a detailed strategy for your business, a strict spreadsheet for your finances, or a clear list of personal goals. But if your heart is not surrendered, these projects will be fragile constructions. The wise man does not ignore planning, but neither does he trust it as if it were enough. He prays before deciding. He consecrates before beginning, he asks for direction before acting. And in this way, what could have been just another human attempt becomes a work confirmed by the Lord. Now let us go together to Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verses 18 to 26. There I wrote, I hated all the toil at which I toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or foolish, yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I gave myself up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God, for apart from him who can eat or who can have enjoyment. For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. What I wanted to show is that work without purpose turns into a burden, but before God it becomes joy. What this teaches us is that many spend their lives building only to leave behind an inheritance of possessions, but end up handing over to others what has no eternal value. True joy is not in endless accumulation, but in experiencing each day of work as a gift. When you understand this, even exhausting tasks gain new meaning, because you see that your effort has a purpose that goes beyond material things. The wise man learns that purpose is what separates the work that sickens from the work that strengthens. I would now like to read with you Proverbs chapter 22, verse 29. I wrote, Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. What I wanted to teach is that it is not speed or chance that brings recognition, but constant excellence, repeated in silence, seen and blessed by God. Think of someone who tends a simple trade, perhaps repairing shoes, preparing meals, or cleaning a room. To human eyes, it may seem like small work, but when done with dedication and faithfulness, that man is worthy of honor. The door that opens before the great does not appear by luck, but by the silent testimony of one who was faithful when no one was watching. That is the secret many ignore. Honor is born in the hidden place. Now I will take you to the Song of Songs, chapter 8, verses 6 and 7. There I wrote, Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. For love is strong as death, jealousy is fierce as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, the very flame of the Lord. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can floods drown it. If a man offered for love all the wealth of his house, he would be utterly despised. What I wanted to show is that not even the greatest accumulation of possessions can sustain a true bond. Love, just like purpose, is non-negotiable and cannot be bought. Here is the revelation. It is no use prospering in work if you lose the heart of those beside you. Abundance that dissolves into loneliness is not true abundance. The wise man understands that his work must be sustained by love, for it is love that makes each achievement truly significant. To work without love is like building a house on sand. It may appear imposing, but it will not stand against the waters. And I still want to open with you in Psalms chapter 1, verses 1 to 3, where my father David wrote, Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. What my father wanted to show is that prosperity is not born from deceptive shortcuts, but from roots deeply planted in the Lord. Applying this, we understand that work without spiritual foundation may even generate temporary gains, but it will not last. The tree that endures the seasons is the one with deep roots. In the same way, the wise man does not work only to survive, but because he is rooted in God. His prosperity is not measured by fleeting shine, but by the constancy of fruits that do not wither. There is a deception many have not yet noticed, to think that work is only a means to status or wealth. This illusion consumes people who live for applause or for the numbers in their accounts, but who deep inside feel neither peace nor purpose in what they do. To work without purpose is like running without direction. There is movement but no arrival. And I tell you, wealth without purpose is vanity, and effort without meaning is like wind slipping through the fingers. Think, for example, of someone who climbed to a high position only to satisfy pride. At first he may enjoy the pleasure of being recognized, but soon emptiness takes over, because his work was not anchored in a greater purpose. Now compare this with the woman who wakes early to sustain her children, or the man who devotes his profession to serving the community. Though they may not have the highest salaries, they find joy in what they do, because they understand that their work carries a why. The wise man does not measure abundance by what he accumulates, but by what remains in meaning. I also want you to reflect on this. Work is not only survival, it is legacy. Some work only to pay bills and reach the end of the month, but this does not sustain the heart. True balance comes when career, business, and family are aligned with the fear of God. It is when every effort is transformed into construction for the future. What is done only out of necessity exhausts. What is done as an offering to God endures. See how this applies to modern life. A professional who accepts any job only to survive may keep his bills paid, but he lives drained, unable to see value in what he does. But when he finds ways to align his effort with purpose, whether by using his gifts to help others or by sustaining his home with dignity, then every task gains new brilliance. The wise man understands that even the act of raising children, of serving a client with care, or of leading with justice is part of his legacy before the Lord. That is the balance, labor that feeds the soul, and purpose that gives meaning to labor. Let us now open in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 and 10. There I wrote, "Honor the Lord with your wealth, and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will overflow with wine." What I wanted to show is that true abundance does not come from selfish accumulation, but from the recognition that everything belongs to God. Work becomes prosperous when it is returned in honor, and honor opens the way for greater blessings. In practice, this means that every gain must carry gratitude, not vanity. Think of the one who receives his wages and immediately sets apart what belongs to God, while also caring for his family with devotion. That grateful heart turns simple resources into lasting prosperity. The wise man knows it is not the amount itself that brings peace, but the way it is used in reverence to the Lord. I will now move to Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verses 10 and 11. I said, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might, for there is no work, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave to which you are going." I saw also that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, but time and chance happen to them all. What I wanted to teach is that talent and speed alone are not enough. Life is governed by faithfulness and by God's timing. See how this speaks today. A young man may believe that his intelligence or strength will open every door, but without constancy, he soon loses his way. Meanwhile, the one who, even in simple tasks, pours out his heart and trusts God's timing, reaps opportunities no human effort could create. The wise man understands that discipline and patience are as precious as talent. Let us now open Proverbs chapter 13, verse 11. There I wrote, "Wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. What I wanted to affirm is that the rush to get rich leads to ruin, but faithfulness in the process is what multiplies. Prosperity is not the result of shortcuts, but of steady, firm steps. Look at today's world. Many chase quick profits in shady deals or illusions of instant wealth, but see how many soon fall into shame. On the other hand, those who work with honesty, saving, investing, and serving with faithfulness build a prosperity solid enough to outlast crises. The wise man does not trust in shortcuts, he trusts in the rhythm of constancy. I also want to take you back to the law. In Leviticus chapter 19, verses 9 and 10, it is written, "When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge, neither shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest. And you shall not strip your vineyard bare, neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyard. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am the Lord your God." What I wanted to show is that prosperity is not just about accumulation, but about sharing. True abundance is that which reaches even the needy. In daily life, this means that the table of a wise man is never complete if there is no place for his neighbor. It may be the businessman who sets aside part of his profit to bless struggling families, or the simple worker who shares bread with his neighbor. The value is not in the amount given, but in the disposition of the heart. The wise man knows that generosity strengthens his own harvest. And finally, I want to open with you Psalm 112, verses 1 through 9, where my father David wrote, "Blessed is the man who fears the Lord, who greatly delights in his commandments. His offspring will be mighty in the land. The generation of the upright will be blessed. Wealth and riches are in his house, and his righteousness endures forever. Light dawns in the darkness for the upright. He is gracious, merciful, and righteous. It is well with the man who deals generously and lends, who conducts his affairs with justice. For the righteous will never be moved. He will be remembered forever. He is not afraid of bad news. His heart is firm, trusting in the Lord. His heart is steady. He will not be afraid until he looks in triumph on his adversaries. He has distributed freely. He has given to the poor. His righteousness endures forever. His horn is exalted in honor." What my father wanted to show is that lasting prosperity is inseparable from the fear of God, justice, and generosity. The application is clear. Wealth may fade, but righteousness remains as inheritance. The man who builds his life in the fear of the Lord leaves not only possessions, but also an honorable name and a blessed generation. This is the kind of abundance that cannot be eroded by crises nor erased by time. This is the legacy of the wise man. There is a revelation that few perceive. Working only for oneself produces emptiness, but working to serve produces abundance that endures. The man who makes his labor a closed circle around himself may accumulate possessions, but he lives restless, without meaning. But the one who aligns his work with the mission of blessing, of sharing, and of honoring the Lord, that man finds fullness. It is not the size of the resource that determines joy, but the direction in which it is placed. Think of someone who spends years building a company, only to flaunt it before others. He may acquire luxuries, but inside he carries the exhaustion of never feeling enough. Compare this with the one who works to provide for his family, create jobs, serve his community, and honor God in every decision. That man lays his head on the pillow and rests in peace, for he knows his labor has meaning. The wise man does not measure prosperity by figures, but by legacy. The secret of abundance lies in uniting faith, labor, and service. Work without faith becomes a burden. Work without service becomes selfishness. But when these three pillars meet, the result is solid prosperity. Just as a tree needs roots, trunk, and fruit, so also man needs faith to ground his foundation, labor to build his structure, and service to bear fruit that feeds others. This is the balance that sustains life before God. See how this unfolds in the home. A father who devotes himself with faith and effort, but also serves with love, builds not only provision but strong bonds. A mother who, besides working, teaches her children the value of faith and generosity, establishes a spiritual legacy. The young person who pours dedication into study, faith into choices, and service into small daily actions is already walking a path toward true abundance. Wise man, when faith, labor, and service walk together, even the home flourishes like a well-kept garden. Wise man, after all that we have shared until now, I want you to pause with me. This is the moment to quiet the noise within you and allow these words to sink deeply into your heart. It is not only about listening to counsel, but about letting the Spirit of the Lord turn it into practical direction for your life. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and give yourself a few seconds of rest. While the soft music fills the air, use this time to thank God for the work already in your hands, to ask for strength to overcome the laziness that often holds you back, and to seek wisdom to unite faith, labor, and service in all that you do. And if you wish, write your prayer request in the comments. Share your name, say where you are listening from, and if you desire, open your heart about the challenge you are facing at this moment. Here, other wise men will see it and will pray for you. And do your part. Choose a comment from someone who asked for prayer and intercede for them. In this way, this space will not only be a channel, but a living community of intercession and fellowship. Remain in prayer in these moments, wise man, because often the greatest transformation does not happen while we speak, but while we stay silent before God and allow Him to work within us. Understand the fruit of your labor. The principle that echoes from the beginning of this journey is simple yet powerful. Work brings abundance. Laziness brings poverty. This is not a mere saying, but the natural order God Himself has established. Just as fertile land responds to seed, so also life responds to the faithfulness of the one who plants with constancy and tends with diligence. Abundance is not luck nor chance. It is the harvest of the one who remained firm when others gave up. In the field of labor, the secret is not only in beginning with enthusiasm, but in persevering with excellence, even when tasks seem small. In purpose, the joy of living comes from recognizing that every effort is part of an eternal calling, not mere survival. In relationships, bonds grow strong when watered with dedication, care, and truth. I declare to you, the wise man does not fear labor because he recognizes in it the blessing of God. True prosperity does not rest in shortcuts, but in daily faithfulness. Therefore, live as a wise man before the Lord, prosperous in your work, full of purpose in your journey, and steadfast in the bonds you build. If these words have found a place in your life, put them into practice. Share this counsel with others so they too may learn to walk in wisdom. And remain with me, for I still have many teachings to reveal. And with each encounter, the Lord will continue shaping within you a legacy that cannot be lost.